Powell. I am a volunteer support specialist with the Girl Scouts of the Green and White Mountains. We cover New Hampshire and Vermont. I am going to be talking to you today about how to set behavioral expectations during your online troop meetings as well as some in-person troop meetings. We'll get started in just a minute, but when you join us, if you want to say hello in the comment section, let us know where you're joining from. That would be fantastic. So we're going to talk today about how to set those behavioral expectations using a strategy called PBIS. So PBIS stands for Positive Behavior, Intervention, and Supports. This is a proactive, evidence-based approach used to promote positive behavior and improve safety. The focus with PBIS is prevention, not punishment. And the goal is to teach positive behavior strategies the same way you would teach a skill like knot tying or a cookie program sales pitch. So when using PBIS, we are going to talk about how to set positive behavior expectations during your meetings. And then we're going to review a few basic PBIS strategies that you can start practicing. Hello to Cindy from Nashua. Nice of you to join us today. So, before I get started, I just want to say if you are joining this and you're thinking in your head, there's a girl in your troop that you have some very specific concerns about some behaviors that you've seen, if you would please reach out to us through our customer care team, that would be fantastic. Our volunteer support specialists are here and we can help you out. We have PBIS toolkits built out, which we can send to you to help you support the behaviors that you're seeing in your troop. So when we talk about using those positive behavior intervention and support, or PBIS strategies and principles to develop troop rules, you want to think using the framework: be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. That's going to sound a little familiar to us as Girl Scout leaders because it sounds a lot like a Girl Scout law. So depending on the age of your girls, what you have going on in your troop, what conversations you've had in the past, you could just get started by going right into the Girl Scout law with them. If this is very new, if everyone's kind of in a difficult spot with everything going on, online meetings are being a struggle, you can definitely get started by using that be safe, be respectful, be responsible to kind of build from there. Before you get started with building these expectations with your troop members, you're going to want to make sure that you check in with the parents or guardians in your troop first. Just let them know that you're going to have an upcoming meeting, talk a little bit about behavior, talk about participation during your online meetings, that you're going to address it head on in a positive way, just so in case one of their girls, if after the meeting they come out and they're a little down or have some questions, the guardians will be ready to chat with them about it. So what you'll do, excuse me, is you will hold that meeting to develop your troop rules. Excuse me, I'm going to take a quick drink of water. These should be generated by the girls with your guidance. Again, it depends on the age of your troop what that's going to look like. When you have daisies or brownies, it's going to be a lot of kind of that like hand over hand where you do a lot of back and forth discussion together. But as the girls get to be a little older, you can really guide the conversation and have them lead and come up with them very specifically. So the actual guidelines, expectations, rules, whatever you want to call it for your troop, should be generated by the girls. It's more engaging and they're more likely to take ownership if they're involved in the development. To get that conversation started, you can ask questions like, what do we need to do to work well together? Because that's a nice positive framework. It gets the conversation started and it gets them thinking moving forward. You can also say something like, what's okay and not okay to do during our troop meetings? Because again, it gets them thinking very specifically. If you're noticing some really like specific things going on, like if they're having like lots of conversation amongst themselves or having some negative conversations amongst themselves, you could start with a conversation like, how do we expect to treat each other during our troop meetings? It really depends on your troop and what you have going on to get started there. The rules you come up with should be simple. You don't want to be having it be like a paragraph, just a few words up to a sentence that you can reference easily when you need to. And you don't want to have too many. Usually for like a general guideline, if you think somewhere, depending again the age of your troop, something like 4 to like 9 rules or expectations is a good place to get started. The most important thing when thinking about this in terms of PBIS is that the rules should be a positive statement of expectations the girls have for each other. So you want to think of something like, I will raise my hand to talk during meeting, instead of saying no talking over each other. Using that positive language, that right there is just doing some behavioral modeling and getting the girls thinking in a positive way, so that when they come into this and they're thinking about the rules and expectations, they're already thinking about nice positive ways they can interact and treat each other, versus thinking of a whole list of no, 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 no. So that's kind of how you're going to get started. Open up that conversation, make those nice guidelines, put those in there. If you have any questions about guidelines or anything that you've tried to set some behavioral expectations for your online troop meetings, I would love to see those in the comment section. Because what I'm going to talk about now is one of my favorite things to talk about, is some specific strategies you can use and different PBIS techniques. So again, if you are interested in learning some more about PBIS, reach out to our customer care team. They'll get you in touch with our volunteer support team, and we can go over with you and kind of review some of the toolkits that we have available. So I'm going to go through a few of these PBIS techniques right now. One of my favorite ones that I talk about all the time, and I think people kind of laugh at me when I talk about it because I get very excited, is acknowledging positive behavior. It seems like such a simple thing to do, but it really goes such a long way. So when you're acknowledging positive behavior, you're recognizing your girls and giving them positive reinforcement for the behaviors you want to see continue. So if you want to see the girls cooperating on the troop meetings online, anytime you see a little moment where someone is asking for someone else's opinion, offering to help online, you can give them a nice positive creative shout out right there, and that's going to encourage that to be happening more often. It can be big or small, and you can do it as frequently as possible. It sounds silly, but like you definitely can't overpraise as long as you mean it. So make sure it's something sincere, something that's really great that you do want to see continue, and that's always a great thing that you can work on. The trick to using this acknowledging positive behavior is when you're having behavioral struggles in your troop, is that for every one time that there is some kind of correction or redirection, that you should kind of plan in the back of your mind to also build in some acknowledgement of positive behaviors, because then that they're getting that recognition for those positive behaviors you want to see continue. And the even better trick is girls that are struggling and having a hard time really need that attention and praise more than ever. So even though it's hard, it can be hard to think of something, if you see just one little great thing that you see a girl that's struggling do, give her some great praise for that, because she's going to feel good about it and she's going to start doing those things more often. Another great PBIS strategy is using a calm, neutral tone. This is one that takes a lot of practice, a lot of self-talk, a lot of patience, and a lot of skill to learn. So as you're learning how to use a calm, neutral tone, you want to be very forgiving with yourself as you learn how to use it, especially in those tense situations. But using a calm, neutral tone is essentially, you're just talking the way that I'm talking right now. Your voice is nice and neutral, you're going through, your tone doesn't change, the speed of your voice doesn't change, and that's true of no matter what you're talking about. So if you're talking about making plans for the rest of the meeting, or if you're doing a redirection for negative behavior, you're still coming at it from this nice neutral place, and that way the girls will know that they're not, in trouble for the behavior, but it's still being addressed and you're working together to move forward. It's a really quick way to help de-escalate a situation. It helps to keep you calm. It helps to reduce the tension of the situation. It sets a great precedent for how behaviors will be perceived in the future. They know that no matter what happens, you're there to be supportive and that you're going to get back on track right away. The times you want to use that, it's pretty much any time something's happening. So if someone's argumentative or angry or upset or anxious, if you're processing a problem, if you're talking about a sensitive subject, it's a great time to kind of come down and use that nice neutral tone. Again, I just want to recognize this takes a lot of patience and self-talk. And it's really great too to kind of, as you're learning this, to think about using I statements. So instead of saying something like, you can work at that desk or work at that desk, you can think about it like, I would like it if you could choose to work at your desk or work at the desk over there. Recenters it a little bit and kind of helps you keep in that nice neutral phrase. Another thing to think about that we don't often think about for online meetings is to still be aware of your posture and kind of your body language as you're talking. They can't see as much of us when we're in these nice little rectangle boxes on their screens, but body language still does come through. So just make sure that you're present, you're looking at the camera as you're using that neutral tone so they know that you're there and you're listening. The third technique I'm going to talk about is redirection. So redirection is really fast to do, it's easy, there's great results a lot of the time. It helps to minimize distraction, and the great thing about it is that you can do that in the middle of another instruction without interrupting. So if you're going through a task, you're talking about your badge work that you're working on, someone needs to be redirected, you can very quickly do that, and then you get right back on task. So if someone's not paying attention, if they're goofing around or talking out of turn, you're going to give that quick reminder of what you're working on and what your troop expectation is that's relevant, and then you're going to continue on with what you're doing. So it's very quick, like, hey girls, just a reminder, we are working on our knot tying badge right now, so we're going to go on to our next step, which is XYZ. A nice quick way to get them back on target. When you're in person, you can also use things like eye contact and proximity to kind of be mindful and redirect. That's a little more challenging when you're online, but if the platform you use has like direct messaging, or if you have a text option, you can send a direct message to that girl to kind of achieve the same effect of that, hey, let's check in, let's keep moving on what we're working on. Another technique that I really enjoy from PBIS are start commands. So these help to get attention and focus back on track, which can be really helpful in troop meetings. To think about Girl Scout start commands, what you want to think about is our lovely Girl Scout quiet sign when we put our hand up in the air when we want some quiet. So our girls are often already familiar with what a start command looks like. That's a great one to use if there's a lot going on, a lot of chatter happening. That quiet sign is a great place to get started, and it's a great way to explain it to the girls if you want to build something in more specifically to your troop meetings. For example, if you are transitioning between topics and the girls are having a hard time going from badge work to talk about what they worked on last week, if you get a nice piece of colored construction paper or post-it note, you can hold that up right to your camera, and you can say to the girls, whenever you see my camera go blue, that means it's time to pay attention, and we're going to get started on our next thing in just a minute. You can also use verbal cues for this. You can say, this is especially good if there is something happening within the troop dynamic that's a little challenging. So you can use things like, we'll begin as soon as you show me that you're ready. We can talk as soon as your voice is as calm as mine. Or I'll be glad to discuss this with you once we're back on track. Again, nice and neutral, still addresses what's happening, but keeps it right in the middle and keeps the redirection nice and quick, and keeps the start command so the girls know what's going on. The last one I'm going to talk about is maybe not quite so relevant for an online meeting, but it's a PBIS strategy that I think is really important. So it's taking a break. I think often, especially with younger girls, if they think about taking a break, they think they're being put on timeout, and it becomes something scary that they don't want to do because they think they're in trouble. But if you think about taking a break, we could even think about ways to get creative and think of ways they could take a break even if they're feeling a little overwhelmed in your online meeting, because there is a lot going on in the world right now. So building that break session turns that time out into something that's more about self-care and mental health. So if a girl is feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated or frustrated, having that take a break built in is a really great way to make sure that she can have a few minutes to get reset, get back on track if things are challenging. If you're building this for your troop meeting, you can build that right into your troop expectations. So you can say, hey, let's talk about building a take a break or a quiet corner. And then you can have some kind of, a bean bag or a coloring book or some like an iPod they can use for 5 minutes, have a timer set, something that you know your girl's the best, something that's going to work for everybody, where they can have that few minutes where they can go, decompress, get their brain back on straight, and rejoin the meeting. So we have now reviewed about 5 different PBIS strategies. We have talked about how to set some rules and expectations for your troop meetings, which brings us to the end of our session today. I am so glad you're able to join us. I'm so glad you're able to watch this and learn a little bit about positive behavior interventions. Again, if you have any questions or any ideas, feel free to reach out to us through customer care. And if you have anything that's working really well for you and your troop, feel free to pop that over in the comment log. We'd love to see and hear about it, share, and do some collaborative learning. Stay tuned, keep an eye on our Facebook page. We have lots of great stuff coming up, lots of good things happening. We have all of our camp events happening. We're doing our outdoor tours. We have our fun story times. We're doing some badge work. We have troop meetings going on. There's a ton going on that you can do to still participate in Girl Scouts, even though we can't meet in person right now. So thank you again for joining us. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you all have a fantastic day. Thank you.